Tampa Bay's Tan Talk. Entertaining and informative radio for the Sunshine State.
Welcome, everybody, to Reality Check, the radio show, dealing with family issues of the day and discussing conservative, common-sense American values to solve the problems we're all faced with today. If you love God and honor your country, you'll love Reality Check. Join hosts Mike and Clary Minokian and their cast of characters as they bring sanity to an insane world. Heard weekday afternoons right here on the Tan Talk Radio Network and on Net Talk World Global Talk Radio. Check out our website, realitychecklive.talkspot.com, to find out more about the show. And now, with more stimulating conservative American talk, here's Mike and Clary.
Welcome to Reality Check Live. Mike and Clary. Coming up by special request, Dr. Timothy F. Johnson, the first African-American to be Vice Chairman of North Carolina Republican Party since its conception since 1864, followed by the Cook Report. And a special shout goes out to U.S. WebTalkRadio.com listeners today. And once again, a special shout goes out to NetTalkWorld.com.
Tan Talk. Entertaining and informative radio for the Sunshine State.
Welcome back to Reality Check Live. And on the line, we have Dr. Timothy Johnson, F. Johnson. And hello, he is the Vice Chairman of the North Carolina Republican Party, the first African-American to hold a position since its inception in March 1867. Wow, that's a long time. Welcome, Dr. Johnson.
Well, thank you for having me on your show today.
You came to us highly recommended from a friend of ours who has carries our show, U.S. Web Talk Radio, Rich, and he was so excited about you coming on that he put out an email to about 100 of his best friends to listen to us today. So I hope you don't mind that I am going to open up the phone. So he's really impressed. And first of all, congratulations to the chairperson, the vice chairperson of the Republican Party in North Carolina. How does that feel to be the first African-American to have that seat?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's a lot of responsibility. I recognize that it was some trailblazers, obviously, well before me. A lot of people will assume that my ascension to the position was driven because of Chairman Michael Steele, and I would tell you that there were many things that were happening in North Carolina well before Michael Steele became our RNC chairman. So I just think it's a blessing, and, of course, it's all by the grace of God that I have this opportunity to serve North Carolinians.
And a few videos I was able to find of you on YouTube, one of the things I noticed that what you're doing and standing up for the Republican Party and for things of our country, it's not just a job, it's a passion, it's a calling, and you take it very seriously, and your wife stands right by you in this calling.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's as you said, it is a calling. It is one that when you get into this business, it requires a great deal of time and energy and commitment, and that's something that is not always easy to come by because my position is not a paid position, so it is something that I just truly have a passion for.
We already have a call, so I'm going to let the caller on. It's Lynn from Lakewood Ranch. Lynn, welcome to Reality Check.
Yes, good morning. I kind of have a twofold question, and I guess it's been something that's been out there for a long time. And sure. There was a show Friday that Glenn Beck had, and I thought it brought up some interesting points, and I just have one I'd like to ask for his input. Many black Americans voted for Obama, even though they were Republicans or more conservative, because they felt a sense of loyalty to the race instead of to the country. And that is something that I wondered about during the election times, because I saw many Christians or conservatives that had Obama bumper stickers on their cars in the church parking lots, knowing his mindset on so many of the normal conservative issues that were contrary. Have you found that, and are you getting any static on that also? That's my question. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for asking that question. I think what you saw in Glenn Beck's that the black community is not a monolithic thinking community or acting community. At one point in the show, you saw where there were two people on the stage talking to Glenn Beck, and there was a young lady who said, "Am I the only one up here who didn't vote for Obama?" And I do think to some degree there was a deal of people voting for President Obama because of the color of his skin and what they assumed to be a representation of their issues. However, I was very clear when I was at the national convention as well as throughout the election cycle that I was not voting for him, did not believe he was prepared or ready to be our president. And, yes, that puts you in a different light because it's quick to call us everything but a child of God because of that. And actually, I'm proud to say that I'm also the chairman of the Frederick Douglass Foundation, and we've got a video going, or we've got some shows going on talking about my Alpha 21, where it talks about Planned Parenthood and the role of Planned Parenthood as it relates down to people of color, and ironically enough, President Obama is very much so in support of Planned Parenthood. So it's now starting to shed some light on what the real agenda was, and people didn't take time to really dig into the issues the way they should have because they were so astounded by the fact of having a person of color getting that far in the system. So, yeah, I get a lot of pushback on that, but I continue to move forward.
Well, I'd like to talk about some of the issues with you, Dr. Johnson. And one of the issues I want to talk about is bringing the mastermind of 9/11 to New York City. And for a lot of folks, I was listening to Karl Rove on Fox the other day. He says this is extremely dangerous for the judge, the jury, the witnesses, court officials, and that if they find these men guilty, they might become a target after the trial. What's your thoughts?
And I tend to agree with that. You know, the one thing that we have not done and we continue not to do is recognize all the repercussions of having a trial such of that magnitude in New York, knowing all the things that happen in New York. You got a lot of pundits that will always give you pushback, but something like that, and knowing that New York is still a very viable city because it is our international import, intake when people come to our country, as big as it is and what it has going on, there's a lot of considerations that have to be taken in. And I also want to do, as you said, that give a recognition because I served 21 years in the military, so I want to recognize those individuals who lost loved ones a week ago down at Fort Hood, as my son is in the Army as well. I want to just recognize them and thank them for their service and of course, the sadness of those individuals who gave their lives here in the United States at Fort Hood, which we would think would be very more secure than what it was.
You know, and when we look at what's happening with the 9/11 masterminds coming to a civilian court, and hopefully they don't get some lawyer that is so crafty that they find a technicality and these guys just go out and walk. But when you look at what's taking place with political correctness, and I believe that's what we're seeing here in New York, what we saw also at Fort Hood, if political correctness wasn't controlling the military, this probably may have never happened. And what are your thoughts about political correctness, and what are your thoughts about the orders given to fellow soldiers, not to mention anything if it's a Muslim or they're under special protection? How do you feel about all the things that the breakdown we saw that cost 13 lives and 29 wounded?
Yeah, political, when it comes down to the armed forces in particular, because I did spend such a great amount of time in the military, political correctness has gone out the window. It went out the window when I went to basic training. It went out the window when I became an officer in the military. And so it's really about right and wrong and protecting our nation, and also recognize that we take an obligation that we will defend our country, foreign and domestic. And so you see an obvious that the FBI and the CIA and whoever else was monitoring this major, that they saw he was doing some things. And I think the reality of it is we should have put a stop to it then. That's why we have background checks and all the rest of the things that we do, because we recognize how important it is. And we know that we have people in our military who have a hidden agenda and who are out to hurt us. And once we find those things out and find those individuals, we have a responsibility to address it immediately. We can ill afford to wait anymore. I mean, you think about Timothy McVeigh, you think about what just happened at Fort Hood. So we've had these throughout the years. We've just got to start being much more proactive and be okay with it and stop worrying about what people think about it.
What is the morale of our armed forces right now, the men and women who are actually in the service, to think that their lives are possibly under pressure from those that they're actually working with?
I think, the morale overall is good, but I do think that there are some things that are going on in our society that we have to be very cognizant about. One of the things that I know is a touchy subject for some people, but we've got to be realistic about this. Don't ask, don't tell.